You're listening to Shooting Hoops with your hosts, Dia Miller and Adam Drexler.
Welcome to Shooting Hoops, a podcast about basketball and the Portland Trailblazers. I'm your host, Dia Miller, and I'm here with my co-host, Adam Drexler. Adam, hi.
Hey. Ep 2.
Episode
2. We're going to keep it rolling. And we must be the Blazers' good luck charm because we're still winning.
Yeah, we definitely are. This is episode 2. You can now find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube. I'm new to this whole YouTube thing, but having video kind of gives us the ability to do some fun things. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to kind of see us as we figure this out in real time because this is new. So we're going to try some new things. We've got some things up our sleeves. If you're listening on podcast platforms, we will do our very best to paint a picture of what's going on so that you're not missing out too much. Our goal is to get these up as fast as possible because we know that things change very quickly with basketball. You know, there's obviously usually multiple games a week. So we want to get these up quick. YouTube will probably be going up slightly faster. So if you are wanting to watch the fastest version, that's going to be where you can find it. Adam, it's November 1st. Can you believe we made it through October? How did this happen? How is it November already?
With some luck. And belief, the power of hope. We held out hope that the Blazers would have a good start to this season, even though they had a tough schedule coming in for the first half. And it looks like we're exceeding expectations, unless you're me and you, because we expected this. We called this.
High expectations. We have high expectations. I wore yesterday. So yesterday was Halloween. Did you dress up for Halloween? Do you do Halloween?
I went as Batman for the third year in a row.
I mean, hey, look, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think that's how the saying goes, right?
Yeah. It's just different iterations of Batman. Just, you know, 1 year it's a Batman onesie. The next year it's the actual costume. And then the next year I'm like, all right, maybe a shirt. Some shirts with like the Batman logo on it. It just depends on how I'm feeling that year, but this was a good one.
I dressed up as a unicorn and painted my face with a rainbow and held a Blazer sign and decided that I basically went as myself. It's been a long-standing joke that, you know, I'm the rainbows and the unicorns of Blazers fandom. So I actually, truthfully, almost wore it to podcast today, but I decided against it.
Oh, that would have been perfect. I would have worn my Batman Blazers edition. Missed opportunity.
We should. We'll have to wait till next year for that. So last time we recorded, the team was 4-1. We don't have a whole lot of an update because we've only had one game since then. However, we're 5-1. We won the game. So that's very good news. Tomorrow, the Portland Trailblazers play the Memphis Grizzlies at home in the Moda Center. And then they jump onto a 6-game road trip, their first of 3 this season, which is, I don't think any other teams in the NBA have 3 6-game road trips. So that's a doozy. How are you feeling about the next 6 games?
I'm very optimistic because a lot of players are stepping up and doing things. As you've seen, one of the players that's stepping up the most is Shaedon, and he's doing it in such a way that you could not, watching the game, I could not tell he was a rookie.
No, yeah, he like really, really killed it. And he really killed it. Like we've got a lot of games. So we've got the Suns, then the Suns again, then the Heat, then the Hornets, then the Pelicans, and then the Mavericks. So that's our 6-game streak. There's a lot to talk about in Rip City this week. Despite having only one game, the biggest buzz seems to be around rookie Shaedon Sharpe, like you just said. He is really killing it. On a side note, because we're going to jump into this right now, we're gonna talk a little bit about Twitter. We finally have Adam on Twitter, so he has joined. You can see our handles. We can see our handles down here. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're not, you can find me at Diandraann, DIANDRAANN. I definitely just read my own name off the screen. Don't judge me. And you can find Adam at DrexGlides2, which the number 2. So we are trying to kind of bring in some interaction, and one of the ways we're going to do that is through Twitter. So make sure you're following us. Comment if you have questions, if you want to discuss. We're going to be doing that here. So we liked the idea of kind of doing that, having some interaction. We're going to be sharing and discussing some of those comments here and questions. This week I posted that we were going to be doing this, and we got some response. So we've got some good stuff coming up, but let's get back to Shaedon. Shaedon was kind of the talk of Twitter this week. His teammates had a lot to say about him. So I'm going to show you some of these here. This is where we get fancy if you are on YouTube watching us. Here we go. So this tweet is from Casey Hodal, who is the Blazers beat writer. And basically he's just quoting all of the teammates. This kid is going to be a star. That was Trendon. It's supernatural. That was Jabari. He's just talented, beyond this world talented. That was Anthony Simons. His teammates have a whole lot to say about him. We've also got this one, Damian Lillard with Shaedon Sharpe is special.
And not only that, there were some words from the coach, Chauncey Billups, as well, saying that he's must-see TV. So yeah, anytime somebody like Mr. Big Shot says that, it's a big deal.
Yeah, and then I heard that he also Chauncey compared him to Vince Carter and Brandon Roy, which that is some high praise. Yeah.
That's high praise. And watching him, I think my favorite thing about him is getting to see him operate in different spaces of the court. For a lot of his possessions, he's usually knocking down a corner three, or he's not really put in a situation to kind of be a playmaker, or he's kind of the drop-off dunker or cut in the lane. But this past game with the Rockets, I saw him, coming off a screen and operating in the mid-range area. I saw him, coming back and making some bold dunks, which in this league, you're jumping against 7-footers out there. So anyone that's a high flyer out there and is not afraid to tear down the rim, and also knock down a three in the corner and still hit those shots and help the team, those are solid plays. On top of that, he was playing great defense. So you love to see it.
Yeah, he did not look like a rookie. And I think part of that is we've played well enough that our rookies over the last few years have not been early picks. So that's part of it, is we're getting somebody that is a more developed player than maybe some of our previous rookies. However, that being said, he was kind of a wild card because nobody had really seen him play. So to see him come out and play like this after not playing for the last year in any, I hate to say legit capacity, that's not accurate, but he didn't play in college. He kind of sat. So this is huge to see this. There's a lot of talk about him. And one of the things that's happening, Adam, tweet is directly for you. I've heard some comparisons here. Let's put this up here. This is from Brandon Goldner. It says, yeah, it's way too early for this, but from what you've seen so far, who has more glide, Shaedon Sharpe or a certain legendary Blazers player whose name happens to rhyme with glide and may or may not be related to one of the hosts? Adam, what do you think? I'm hearing this. I've heard this a few times from people comparing his dunks to those of your dad. What do you think?
You know what? He is a high flyer. He is a high flyer in the highest capacity. He's Showtime. He's fun to watch. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, Blazers fans. Let's pump the brakes just a little bit. Let's see more than 6 games and kind of, let's wait on that. I would love to see it. I would love for him to just start taking off from the free throw line, and I would love to see that, but there's a line for that. And that's a good goal. It's a good goal to have, but come on, Blazers fans, let's.
I'm kicking myself a little bit here that I didn't put the video of you. If you guys don't know this about Adam is quite a dunker. I had the opportunity to go meet up with him at a park one day, and I don't know, we were there for quite a while, and he just dunked after dunk after dunk after dunk while I photographed it. And we've got video of it. I'll post it when we put this out. I'm gonna post the video of you again, and you guys can see he's got some moves.
Yeah, for me it was like, with a name like Drexler, you can't just be doing layups. So big shoes to fill, and I aim to please. So
that's fair.
And if Shaedon keeps this up, who knows? We might have to change his last name to Shaedon Drexler.
I was gonna say Shaedon. The glide doesn't sound quite as catchy. We're gonna have to find something that rhymes with Shaedon, which won't be easy. If somebody's got a nickname, give it to us.
Oh yeah, I'd love to hear these nicknames.
Yeah, we're gonna put that out there. But yeah, I think there's definitely a grace to his dunking. He makes it look effortless. I mean, he dunked on LeBron. And that was pretty wild. The guy's just, I mean, man, I think my favorite play from the entire game was when Keon Johnson grabbed that ball and lobbed it back to Shaedon, and he leaped up, and it was just absolute perfection.
And hung on the rim for a few seconds, to let him know gravity's real.
Right.
I love that. I love that confidence, especially from a rookie. And he's a high flyer. And when you have people like that, they're fun to watch and they energize the team. So I look forward to more plays like that.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him. We've had some guys like that. We've had some guys like that are rookies that are real bouncy, but they haven't really seen substantial time. Greg Brown, he's really bouncy, but he doesn't really see a lot of substantial time. So we don't get to see that side of him very often. I feel like it's been a while since we've had somebody like that's been, playing regularly as much as Shaedon is and jumping up like that. Mm. So also we've got another tweet here. This is kind of an interesting conversation.
More interesting than the Drexler. Okay.
This is gonna be fun. If Shaedon keeps playing well in the minutes he's currently getting, do you think he will be a starter by the end of the season? This one comes from Jason. This is interesting. I mean, it's so early on in the season, and he did get the start. But obviously that was largely because Dame was out with an injury. What do you think, Adam? Where do you fall on this?
Jason might be onto something because, he's a player that can fit into multiple roles. He's got good height at 6'6", and he can do a little bit of everything. He's got the intangibles, and I can see a lineup where he thrives in the starting position playing, in the first unit. It's interesting to see, but also at the same time, you've guys like Josh Hart who are in the starting lineup who also have those intangibles and kind of bring that intensity. So it'd be very interesting to see different looks. I think this is a team where so many different people down the line could start. You could have a lot of different starting combinations with this Blazers team, and I think all of them hustle, all of them make those extra plays. So I would love to see it. I'm for it. I'd love to give it a try.
I think that's actually one of the Blazers' big strengths this season is their versatility. There are so many different ways that these guys can be. Like if you think of it like a puzzle. There's so many, with a lot of teams, there's only one way you can make that puzzle work and fit together, one or two ways. With this team, it's like you can switch those pieces all around and come up with a million different combinations. I think that that's actually a strength that we have, especially for a team that has so regularly been plagued with injury. I think it's a big strength that when somebody's like, we're seeing that right now, we've got players injured and there are guys that we can plug into those spots and they're holding their own and they're playing well and the team is still meshing. And I don't think that that's super common to have as many people as we do that can fill those spots. And I think Shaedon is, I think he has a potential to be a somewhat versatile player. And I don't know. I think it's always tricky with rookies, especially when you have a stacked team, as far as in the sense of we have a lot of guys that are not like young guys. They're
Huge veteran
established.
presence.
Yeah. And so I feel like there's definitely that is a factor. You can't just take, a veteran and throw a rookie into his spot and have it be okay. I wouldn't think.
Unless you're like LeBron James, somebody like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously when you're a team that has like the number one pick or something, you're gonna kind of expect that. Although at the same time, if you're a team that has the number one pick, you have the number one pick for a reason, and maybe don't have those established names on your team. There's a lot. I feel like there's got to be, and again, as somebody who's played and spent time playing professional basketball, you know this better than you do. But there has to be a little bit of politics in this. There's more to it than just we're going to throw this guy in at a start.
Yeah, and I think Chauncey kind of knows what he's doing with that. I mean, he's not just giving the keys away immediately. You kind of have to bring people in, get them assimilated to the NBA, which is a lot of games in a very short period of time, and it's a lot of wear and tear, and a lot of people's bodies are not used to that when they come into the league. And on top of that, I think one thing that's really helping this Blazers team is that at any moment, anyone's name could get called, as you saw Shaedon getting a start.
Yep.
When you have a team, usually after the first few weeks or by training camp, usually you kind of know where you stand, where your minutes are going to come in, what your role is on the team. But we're seeing with this Blazers team that when guys are out, other guys are able to step up because they know their name has the possibility of getting called. They have the potential. Shaedon went from playing 12 minutes one night to starting another night. So I think when you have that, everyone on the roster is looking to show what they can do and what they can bring to the team when they get more minutes. So it's driving the competition and it's increasing the intensity in which we play with.
Yeah, I think for sure that sense of competition is always a good thing. When you have someone to compete with, you're going to play better. You're going to do better. You're going to work harder. And I think we saw that at the beginning of the season where they had that fifth spot to fill. And we had several guys that were kind of vying out for it, with Josh Hart and Justice Winslow and Nasir Little all kind of fighting for that spot. And I think that healthy sense of competition is good. I think it definitely encourages, hard work and just pushing it to the next level. And I hope that continues. I hope they keep challenging each other as they do this. Okay, so here is another good one. This is
we got graphics now.
We got graphics.
Episode 2, we got graphics. We're moving up.
There was a tweet that showed the Kia rookie ladder, the top rookies currently. And it was obviously Paolo, Benedict, and Jabari Smith Jr., which I don't think anybody is surprised about. But it was interesting because Casey Hodal retweeted it and said, none of these rookies dunked on LeBron this last week. And I think that is, obviously Shaedon Sharpe wasn't the one that everybody, he wasn't in the top 3-4 picks, whatever. But I think he's a rookie to watch this season. I think that's our conclusion to this conversation is he is somebody to watch. And I think he's going to continue to surprise people and really develop into a solid player.
Yeah, I wish they would show like most impactful rookies. So, I mean, you have your players on like lottery teams or maybe teams where they're allowed to just do whatever they want to experiment to develop them for that season because their team is not really competing for, playoff contention. But then there are rookies who come in and fill a role on their team and they do it so well that you don't even know they're rookies. And those are the players who are just so impactful. So Shaedon playing his role, not getting ahead of himself, playing within himself and kind of learning as he goes and makes his way in the NBA and defines who he's going to be for his career. That's impactful. And whenever you have that, that's major for a team.
Well, and I also think that just he's bringing some excitement, that dynamic play. You can watch really good basketball with no dunks, but there's a totally different level when that starts to be part of your team's personality. And you start to see those happen. It brings this just dynamic that we've kind of been missing. We haven't seen a whole lot of that. We haven't seen it this much, at least. I mean, there's obviously it's happening here and there, but to see it this much, he was all over the place with those dunks. So definitely an impactful player for the Blazers, and I think also just really dynamic. All right, so moving on from Shaedon, an interesting question coming in here. We're gonna get this one right. All right, so this was kind of a two. He tweeted 2 in a row, but what's your favorite Blazer lineup from the current season? What is one personnel change that you would make to improve the current team? So let's start there. Adam, what do you think?
Kind of touched on it a little bit. I think, Josh Hart is someone who can fit on any unit. He can do a little bit of everything, similar to Shaedon. They can both kind of fill in wherever they need to be. They can play along stars. They can play as we saw from Josh Hart last season. He can score when he wants to. So I think, that lineup where Shaedon instead of Hart or Hart instead of Shaedon, I mean, really either or. And it kind of depends on a nightly basis what we kind of need from those guys. I think one lineup that I'm not really wanting to see, but I've always kind of wondered what it would look like if Simons was to lead the second unit. That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
To see if we started like a big lineup, maybe against a team that, has poor shooting, like the Bucks with Giannis. What if we start a bigger lineup to kind of slow him down? That'd be interesting to see. But of course, if we're winning, don't change it.
Right. It's that whole, we just said this a few minutes ago, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If
it's not broken, don't fix
it. But yeah, I think that would be interesting. I have wondered that for even before we had this full roster, as it currently is. I really wondered about the idea of Anthony Simons leading that second unit. But again, I also think Anthony Simons has earned his spot. And so to ask him to play in that position kind of feels slightly unfair. But if we're just talking about like what we'd like to see, that I would like to see what that looks like. Not because I think Anthony Simons shouldn't be a starter, but simply because I think it would be fun. I think it would be it would be interesting for sure. I think that it would be something to watch.
Yeah, but he's more than earned his starting spot.
Yeah.
He's on fire right now. So let's knock on wood and not change that at all.
Yeah, I don't know that I would make any change. I think what we're doing obviously is working right now, and I tend to be in the camp of really, I know this is now becoming a recurring theme, but I really tend to be in the camp of if it's not broken, don't mess with it. Like just leave it there, let it work, and this is working. It is working. So the follow-up to that is, if it looks like the Blazers are headed for the play-in again, would you want them to miss the playoffs and keep their own lottery pick in 2023? Oh, Adam.
As much as, lottery picks help and they help you to kind of, get better each year, I think that's just not Blazers culture. I mean, it's not Blazers culture to just lose or tank. Of course, last season was an anomaly for us. Let's not get it twisted. The Blazers are a winning organization. We always make it to the playoffs. Where our team always manages to find a way amidst a tough Western Conference, nonetheless. So, to me, I think for me personally, as a player and a fan, I always go for the side of winning when we can. We always try to win. We always try to compete. If we don't make it, then okay, we get our pick. But let's try. Why not?
Yeah, I agree. I am not somebody who ever is on board with tanking. Even last year, I really struggled with it. And this may be an unpopular opinion, but to me, if there's a chance, like you don't ever purposely miss the playoffs ever. Like if there's a shot of being in the playoffs, you absolutely go for it, and you never know. I was talking earlier today on Spaces, actually on Twitter. We were talking about how so much of who wins the championship every year also has to do with who's healthy. So you never know what's going to happen, and you never know who's going to get cold, who's going to go on a hot streak. Like you just never know. And so to me, why on earth? I mean, think about that when we made it a few years back to the Western Conference Finals and nobody expected that. Like what if we'd won that and gone to the championship? Like you don't want to give that up. So I think you never ever purposely miss the playoffs, and I agree with you in that I don't think that's part of Blazers culture. I do not think that
especially it goes all the way back to when my father was playing. There was a year there where they were going to the finals, actually 2 times where they went to the finals, and the team wasn't, number 1 in the rankings. They weren't the flashiest or the highest touted team, and they still ended up making it to the finals to play against the Pistons. And that's why you always compete. You always try to win. You never know. And next thing you know, you're playing against Isaiah Thomas in the finals.
And I also think too that, like, especially in a situation like this where you have a team that really is good, if you don't play to that degree, like if you make a choice to like miss the playoffs, that has to also impact your team's morale. And like going into the next season, like the guys that are playing at this level, and you can attest to this obviously on several levels, but like the guys that are playing professional basketball are competitors. Like you don't get to this point without being a competitor. You just don't. And I think that it's one of those things that is probably ingrained in almost everything you do. I mean, we've had conversations about this podcast where I'm like, oh, there's the and I think of myself as being a very competitive person, but like just the degree to which that competitive nature is ingrained in professional athletes, it's real hard to ask those guys to miss something like that purposely. So yeah, I'd go with no. All right. So moving away from this a little bit, there's some interesting stuff going on with the Blazers, and it's been really interesting because they're not really getting talked about a lot. And they're currently the number 1 team in the Western Conference. And we're not hearing all that much. I mean, little bits and pieces here, but we're really not hearing all that much. And I thought this was really interesting. This is NBA on ESPN. They're actually basically quote tweeting someone else who said, Curry's team is 3-4. LeBron's team is 0-5. KD's team is 1-5. Kawhi's team is 2-4. Harden's team is 3-4. Are we officially in the new era of the NBA? Now, this was not today. This was obviously we weren't at this point yet, but
some of those teams that got their first win, and
the Lakers have won one since then.
The Clippers clutched a win thanks to Paul George.
Yeah, so there's been some updates to this list, but it's essentially close to the same. And I find this really interesting because if you had said this is how the season was going to start out at the beginning of this season, I don't think this is what you would have expected. When you have, I mean, Steph Curry and the Warriors, they're the reigning champions and they're 3-4. The Lakers with all these, big names, 0-5. obviously, again, these have changed. Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving on the same team, 1-5. Kawhi, the Clippers are stacked. Like, I really thought that this was going to be one of the teams that was, and obviously they still could be, but this was one of the teams to watch for this season. And then, James Harden and the 76ers, obviously, again, that's another team that you kind of expect to watch. So looking at this list, the NBA standings just really aren't what we expected, and the Blazers are at the top of it. So I guess the question is, can we stay at the top of it? And what is going on in the NBA?
Yeah, sometimes when you look at the standings, it looks like somebody just turned it upside down. And I think, honestly, it just goes to show that this is a competitive league. It's not like it was, back a few years ago where you had to get multiple stars and that was the only way you could compete. Now we're seeing the resurgence of teams are just playing good team basketball.
Yeah.
And we see it with the Blazers. They're playing good team basketball on top of having a superstar, and it's leading to wins. So, of course, it's surprising to see, a LeBron-led team down there and KD and Kyrie. But at the end of the day, it's early in the season. We don't know how things are going to shake up. But one thing that you can look at is kind of how teams are playing. And the Blazers right now it doesn't seem to be an accident. It seems to be intentional. They're playing hard. And they're really winning these games. They're not being handed these games. Teams are not taking a night off. So you love to see that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think especially because that always feels like it's the narrative around this team, is that, like, it's never because the Blazers won the game. It's because the other team lost. And so I really like exactly what you just said. Like, it feels so good to be at a point where, like, they are winning these games. They are fighting for these games. They are playing to be competitors. And it's really a nice change.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I'm curious that no one's talking about is that the Blazers are winning. They're far exceeding expectations from what, other sports analysts and basically the NBA media is saying. And if this were, say, the Brooklyn Nets, if this were the Bucks, if this were, one of those teams with the big name player, we would be talking about possible MVP or like early talks about MVP. And I think the weirdest thing for me is no one's talking about the possibility of Dame being an MVP candidate this season. He's got a great team. He's leading this charge. So I think that's a serious discussion. What does Dame have to do to get that MVP nod this season?
Yeah, I think so too. And I feel like 2 games in, when we hadn't lost and we'd won both, I mean, really early, I was over here like, Dame's going to win MVP this year. This is it. This is the year. This is the year we win the championship. This is the year Dame wins the MVP. Like, this is it. But in all honesty, I wonder sometimes how much of that has to do with just the small market team that really hasn't made waves in a while. And, the narrative around Dame has been, when is he leaving Portland? It hasn't been this. And it's almost like the media doesn't seem to know what to do with it. Like, and I don't know if they just forget. Like, I don't know if the Blazers, there's not really any drama surrounding them this year. There's not really there, and there's all this other drama going on all throughout the NBA, and so that's getting a lot of airtime. But yeah, you don't hear it a lot, and I'm here to say, like, I think if the Blazers make a solid run and if they keep having a season like they're having, and obviously Dame is healthy again and continues to play the season, I think he has a solid chance. I think it's hard to not make an argument that he should have a shot at that. If you take this team that, you look at some of these teams that are really stacked with star power, and then you look at the Blazers, and if this team can make a run into the playoffs and possibly at a championship, you absolutely have to give him some props for that.
I think if Dame leads this team to the playoffs and stays healthy, then I think people have to look at, the star power of it, because it's not I mean, as far as team basketball goes, you still need a star on your team to kind of carry the load. And when it's crunch time, the Blazers know where to go. It's his whole nickname. So with that, he's the player that can take you there. And we hear about the Lakers all day, every day. We hear about the Nets all day, every day. I think what I would like to see is, even though it's small market and no one expects it, to start the discussion about, okay, we're seeing a team that not only has great players and a great star, but that star is showing you that he's not just numbers, he's winning games. So I think with Portland, we're always going to get a weird look from the media, but me personally, I think if Dame can take this team to the playoffs and get ahead of the play-in, I think that would be my MVP.
Yeah, I agree. And I think especially, and I think the MVP is always such an interesting conversation because people have a different idea of what that is. Is it the best player in the NBA? Is it the player that made the biggest difference for their team? Like I feel like there's so many different definitions for it. But I think truly Dame could fall into either. I mean, he should be a part of the MVP conversation, regardless of how you view it. But I think especially looking at the fact that he's coming off of the injury that he's coming off of and he's performing the way that he is, I don't think people were expecting that. I think people really thought, especially with him being in his 30s now, having taken the whole year off, the significant surgery, I think, and then I also think too, like playing the last couple years with a bad injury. So he's essentially spent the last few years either not playing or playing through extreme pain. And so I don't think people expected him to come out and be the player that he was before all of that, especially given his age. A lot of times when players go through a big surgery that's that significant, they don't continue to be the same player that they were. I think some of that is just being out of practice and trying to get back to the same point that you were, and obviously the toll that injury itself can take, but he's done that. I mean, obviously, again, we're early on in the season. There's still a lot to see, but if he continues like he did coming out the gate, that man should be in talks for the MVP 1,000%. 1,000%.
Definitely. I think the MVP is a regular season award, and if you have a team that is predicted to be a lottery team, and he's taking them to the playoffs, I think that's a valuable player in my book. And of course, you have your players that are expected to win a championship each year, and that's kind of a different category. And during the regular season, sometimes that kind of doesn't really matter. Like some of those records don't matter. There are some teams that are like, okay, we're just trying to make the playoffs in a good spot so that we can win that championship. And then there are teams who are saying, okay, we weren't supposed to be in the playoffs, so we're going to try to make the playoffs and make that run. And I think the Blazers are set up to do that. If Dame can take us there, then yeah, why not MVP?
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think it's really, I think he's been someone that should be in the running for that in the past. But it's not just, even though it's an individual award, the way that the team performs as a whole impacts it. And I think that's been one of the things that has kind of held him back. So yeah, the other one that's interesting to me is Anthony Simons. I really thought that Anthony Simons last season was going to be really talked about for most improved player. And I think had he not gotten injured when he did and had to sit the rest of the season, I think he would have been one of the top prospects for that. I think he would have been in that conversation. And I have mixed feelings about that now because he showed so much improvement last season. It makes me wonder if it's even possible for him to improve enough this season that he could still be in the running for that. But I'd like to see him get some sort of nod, whether that's an all-star or what. I think something like that is on the horizon for him.
Yeah, I think one of the things about being a Portland Trailblazer is it's so hard to get normal NBA media to care about more than one player. So Dame has kind of had the spotlight.
Yeah.
We saw that with CJ. We saw that throughout the course of that, addition to the Blazers. And
Right.
Simons is a big time player. He's making big time plays on a winning team. So it's not just fluff. His stats matter, and you love to see that kind of attention. But I think sometimes in the NBA, you have a lot of teams that have a second guy who is just not really getting talked about. We saw it with the Celtics for a long time. Jaylen Brown, his stats were
Yeah.
very comparable to Jason Tatum, but I think he just started getting talked about last year. And
Yeah.
he every bit impacts the game he's the game changer for that team, and he pushed them
Yep.
over the edge. So I think with the Blazers, if we can continue winning, and it's going to take a few of those big wins, beating these
Yeah.
big teams multiple times. But if he can do that, I think he can carve out a name for himself, start getting talked about by the media. And I think it's very possible that he could make an all-star team.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because I feel like that number 2 guy, or the I don't know what to call him, but the guy that's not the superstar, but that's really doing well on a team. The only time they talk about that guy is when the team is not doing well. Like, you hear that, like, right now, there's a lot of discourse about the Lakers, and they've got several guys that are big names that should be talked about in the sense of, like, they're doing well, but because they're not, they're talking about, well, you have all these guys. Same thing with the Nets. You have all these big names, but you're struggling. And so a lot of times that's when, guy number 2 or guy number 3 really gets the talk, is when they're struggling. Whereas in a situation like this, where we have guys that are really stepping up and playing solidly, they're not going to get as much conversation because Dame. And you're exactly right. And there's nothing necessarily like that's typical and normal. But I think that they're going to do some things and hopefully get people talking. I think Anthony Simons has people talking.
Yeah, it's the curse of superstardom is that, whenever you reach a certain level and you're on a team that is in a small market, the only conversations that you get brought up in are trade talks.
Right. Seriously.
Super unfortunate, but I would love to see some of these teams who are exceeding expectations get some coverage.
Yeah, I agree. On that note, Josh Hart. We've talked a little bit about him this episode, but Josh Hart is one of those guys that I am paying a lot of attention to. There's been a lot of talk about the trade deadline and if they'll move him at the trade deadline. And he's, of all the players, he's the guy that we hear that with the most. And I get it, contract and all that stuff, but I really hope he stays. There's a quote that he said to, again, Casey Hodal. If you're not following him, go follow him. He's a great source of information. He's with the team. He gets a lot of great stories. But he quoted Josh Hart as saying, "For the guys that are on my team, I want them to say he's crazy, but I'm happy he's on our side." And Josh Hart's one of those guys that I think a lot of teams would be very happy to have. I think he's a player that will fit in a lot of places and really add to a lot of teams. But I think that's true of the Blazers too. I think, we talked about it earlier. We have this situation where we have all these players that are kind of versatile that we can kind of put in different spots and with different lineups. And Josh Hart is one of those guys. He's one of those guys that you can put him in a lot of different places with a lot of different lineups, and he's going to come through. And he's been one of our biggest guys as far as stats go. If you look at his stats compared to the team, he's right up there at the top. And he has been in every game this season. He's really, really been a contributing factor to this team. And man, I don't know who you could, and I'm not one to talk trades. I don't know who you could trade him for that would be as impactful as he is with this team. So I really hope that they hold on to him at the deadline.
Yeah, I think Josh Hart he's a player who his game adapts to whatever situation. He's like a Swiss Army knife. You see him play with the Lakers, and like early on in his career, you really didn't know what he was going to pan out to be. And even still, we kind of don't know. had seasons where he's kind of just fit in and been a solid role player. But then last season we saw he can take on that scoring load and kind of become that second fiddle. So I think with him, he's definitely a hot commodity. A lot of teams want a guy like that who can do multiple things in multiple roles. But if I was the Blazers, like I said before, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
This is our new motto. We need this on a shirt.
But I think the only way that would even I would even entertain that thought is if I could put together a trade that would get me some height, some solid defenders, and some people who can knock down some corner threes at a consistent clip. And that would push the envelope, but certainly those are few and far in between. And Josh Hart can do all of those things right now. So
right, and that's the thing.
I wouldn't see a trade happening.
That's the thing is you can come up with a theoretical, like, well, if we could get this kind of player, but then it's like, okay, find one that's available, find one that fits all the criteria, find one that wants to cut, like, it's not that easy. And I just, man, I don't know. We'll see. Well, that's going to come as we get closer to that. We're not there yet. Thank goodness. That is a stressful time.
Yeah. Something that doesn't get brought up a lot is Josh Hart he seems to be a great teammate. I think every opportunity he's cheering, he's helping his teammates up. He's making those hustle plays.
But there's a video when he was on the Lakers that was made where it shows clip after clip after clip of him going to high five teammates, and the teammates aren't paying attention and don't high five him back. So he high fives himself. And it's hilarious, but I think just like that team, he's always interacting with the other guys and always encouraging and I mean, you see even just how they interact on Twitter, how they talk about each other. He definitely has found a home there, and I think a place that really he fits well. One more guy we got to talk about. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on this week. Yusuf Nurkic had himself a game. That man came out and he did all the things that we knew he could do. We were just talking about how he's such a difference maker and how we needed to see certain things from him. And then he came out and he did it. And I am so excited to see Nurk play this way. And I am so hopeful that it's going to continue. What do you think about Nurk in the Houston game, Adam?
He's a big deal. I mean, people forget that like he's been in the league for a minute. He knows what he's doing. He's a veteran, and I think this is not the last time we're going to see him have a big game. He has the potential to do it every night. Like I've said, he's one of those players that if he finds his rhythm, can be one of the best centers in the league. So really any night he has a huge game like that is a huge upside for the Blazers. And he's the Bosnian beast. I mean, have you seen all the tools he has? He's huge. He can play make. He can score from anywhere on the court. So, I mean, if he's got it going, watch out.
He was so good. It was so fun to see him have a game like that. Like, I've just been waiting for that. And it was so fun to see him have a game like that. So I hope that something clicked and we're going to get that Nurk night after night because we need him. He was huge for us. Huge.
Yeah. I think having a roster where on any given night a player can step up and anyone can kind of be the second fiddle is a huge plus for us.
Yeah, I agree. Again, so much versatility. I feel like that's our superpower this year. There's a lot of versatility. Now, with all this, there are some injuries. I'm telling you, the Blazers are cursed. Like there's I just feel like there's always injury. And I know that happens all over the place, but like there's just always injuries. We can't escape it. And I mean, going way back, like this has always been a thing. Go ahead.
They're inescapable. It's part of the game. People forget that it's a lot of wear and tear on the body, and even something simple like practice, you could tweak something or land the wrong way, and that's going to affect your play. So
Right. Well, and I think you also forget how large these men are. I mean, you don't forget because you are very tall as well. But like when your body is that long and that tall, and I that's got to be a thing, right? Like I feel like you gotta, it's gotta be, this is a lot of body to keep in a healthy condition. And I think, the way that they're moving around and throwing up against each other and pushing into each other and getting knocked to the ground and jumping in the air, like there's so many opportunities for any little thing to happen. I sprained my ankle in my sleep one time. Like it's like I literally woke up one morning after going to bed
No way.
perfectly fine and like struggled to walk. So like when you talk about what they're doing, like there's gonna be injury. There's gonna be injuries.
All right. We're gonna have to elaborate on that later. But yeah, I think when you're a certain height, especially if you're bigger players in the NBA, you're 7-footers, that's a long way to fall anytime you're falling, and it's a contact sport. So there's so many times where you're hitting somebody, or you're taking contact, or you're landing in a way, and yeah, injuries just happen.
Yeah.
The common misconception is that players are just, if they're on the court, they're super healthy. Like, no, I never have I ever played a season where I was just like waking up every day like spring and spry. I mean, even on your best days, you're aching and you're hurting, and I've had games where I've gone up and tomahawk dunked, and then like literally the next day I'm like limping to go pour some cereal. It takes a lot. It takes a huge toll on your body. So injuries just happen. Sometimes it's not even a direct injury. Sometimes it's like, hey, we need to rest you because your potential to get injured is high.
Yeah, I think that's a solid point. And again, an insight that you have that like I would have never known. Like it is such a high degree of athleticism that's happening. Like, I mean, anybody who does any type of working out or sport or anything like that, you go once and you're sore and your body hurts and whatever else. And so when you think about that level of physical activity on top of being pushed around and knocked around on the court, and you're right, it is a long way to fall, especially when you're jumping as high as they're jumping. Like there's a lot of potential. So right now we've got Trendon Watford, who's been out for a while with a hip injury, Olivier Sarr, who's also been out for a while with a wrist injury, Gary Payton obviously also didn't start the season, and they have now reported that he will be missing the upcoming road trip. So he's going to miss the next 7 games at least, and then they'll reevaluate at that point. It sounds like maybe they're thinking after that he'll be coming back in. So I'm hopeful because we still haven't even seen this team with his defense, and that's going to be amazing. Josh Hart is recovering from a concussion. He's in concussion protocol from the last game. If you saw that happen, he fell just flat back on the back of his head, and it looked really, I like audibly gasped when it happened. It looked really painful. And then Damian Lillard, obviously with his calf, I think it's his calf injury. He's got another 1 to 2 weeks, they say, which is not terrible. It could be so much worse, but so frustrating that he's already hurt. I can't imagine how frustrated he must feel about that.
Yeah, I think with that, there's a potential that they're being cautious about this. Obviously, coming back from an injury, he's got some rust to shake off, and one thing you don't want to do is try to just ramp up too fast too soon and end up hurting yourself for the long term. So it's one of those things where you want to take it slow, especially with somebody like Damian Lillard, who, down the stretch, you're going to need him a lot more. So better to kind of wait. And on top of that, the team right now it seems to have a good culture. You've got pieces in place that can kind of step up. So yeah, I'd rest him for a little bit and make sure he's okay and good to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not too worried about any of these injuries. These are all short-term things. These are all things that are going to, be at the beginning here, and then they're going to be able to go into the season. So I think we're in a good place. I think going into the next, this one last game at home and then 6 games on the road, I think we're in a good place. And I think we are already off to a much better start than we were. So yay for that. I just have to put this up there. This was, if you are on our YouTube, you've got to see this. So if you aren't on YouTube, you need to go on Twitter and look at the picture of Drew Eubanks and Damian Lillard and Nasir Little that was taken when Shaedon Sharp was just slamming everything into the hoop. I'm not sure I've ever seen Damian Lillard this happy. And it was a beautiful sight to see. And I feel like this is our mood going into the rest of the season right now. I just love that picture so much. It's so funny. Okay. Adam, anything else you want to add wrapping this up today?
Nah, I think we're just going to keep it going, keep believing. And whatever we were doing, whatever everyone's doing, you're tying your shoes twice every day or untie them, tie them, wake up on the left side of the bed, whatever you're doing, keep doing it because we're winning.
Wear the socks.
So just keep on doing it.
Don't wash them. Make sure you wear the same thing you've been wearing every time. Just keep up with those superstitions so we keep winning. This is off to an exciting start. So next week, speaking of exciting, next week is going to be an exciting week. We're going to be going into our 3rd episode. And with our 3rd episode, we are going to have a special guest joining us. You definitely don't want to miss this. Adam, are we telling who our guest is?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to be having normal, boring, old dad. No, we are going to be having my father, Clyde Drexler.
Clyde's going to be joining us next week. Now, I'm not sure if I've ever told you this. I feel like I probably have at some point, but I got to meet your dad one time at the Big 3 last summer, I think it was. And, I've talked previously on the podcast I was on before and on Twitter about how big of a fan I was as a kid. And I had a life-size poster of him in my room and, the whole bit. And I'm not somebody who typically gets starstruck. I typically am pretty, level-headed. And I saw him come in and I was sitting on the court because I was going to shoot the games. And he sat like a few chairs down, on the court. And I saw him and immediately I said to myself, like, you cannot just go over there, because if I didn't, I wasn't going to. And so I put my camera down, walked over and I said, "Hi, Clyde Drexler. I'm Deandra. You don't know me, but I know you." And I remember that sentence very clearly. And then I don't remember a dang thing I said after that, but I'm pretty sure I forgot English. So hopefully he doesn't remember that and I can redeem myself in this conversation.
I'm sure it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I've had a few moments like that myself, so
I bet you have with the people that you've been around, and I think especially playing playing with some of those guys. I bet that there have been some moments that have been kind of wild moments.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, being a player is one thing, but I'm also a fan of the sport. So yeah. Whenever I'm around legends to this day, I'm like, okay, even though like they, we know each other, we've had breakfast and all this stuff, I'm still like,
yeah, it's wild. It is wild. So next week, Clyde Drexler, we'll put it out there. I think if people have questions they want to ask, I think we're going to ask the big questions of the season. Obviously, with Dame, Dame, he tied his record the very first game out the door. He's set to break his record, and I haven't really heard him talk about that. So I'm kind of anxious to see what he thinks. Yeah. I think it's going to be
we're going to hear that. Yeah, and he's going to share his thoughts on that. But one thing I kind of wanted to ask the people of Twitter and the viewers is, send us some questions that you've always kind of wanted to ask. Of course, they're the main reporter questions, but
Right.
if you have any of those unique questions that
Yeah.
no one's ever tried to ask, go ahead, shoot those up, and we'll see if we can get those answered.
Yeah, I think that'll be really fun. We'll put that out there on Twitter as well. Give people an opportunity if there are questions that you want to know the answers to. So make sure that you are subscribed to our channel here on YouTube, as well as our podcast feed, so that you aren't missing any updates. Obviously, we have some exciting things coming up and you don't want to miss that stuff. We appreciate your support as we grow. Your likes, comments, ratings, subscriptions, that's all really, really big, especially as this is a startup for us. Like, this is a whole new feed. And as we're getting started, that stuff makes a huge difference for us. So I know that both Adam and I really appreciate just all the feedback we've gotten and all the support, and just, we appreciate you continuing to do that. So Adam, anything else you want to add?
That's all.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening to Shooting Hoops. And we will be back next week.
You're listening to Shooting Hoops with your hosts, Dia Miller and Adam Drexler.